That's what she said.
Welcome back to the Back in Time podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Autry, joined by my co-host, JD. JD, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty fantastic. I'm super excited for tonight's live episode, audience. And if you don't catch us live, obviously you can catch us streaming on YouTube or download us and get the full willy-nilly with tonight's guest of honor. Kyle, who do we have?
We have returning to the show for part 2, may I add, Bud Brutsman. He's the executive producer here for Expedition Back to the Future. Bud, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, I'm glad to be here again. I mean, there's so much in the first live thing that we did because it was before it started streaming, before Expedition Back to the Future started streaming on Discovery Plus, that I couldn't tell you and I wanted to tease you about and I wanted to talk to you about, but then I was immersed in the in the Back to the Future world for so long. I was like, I wanted to engage, but I really couldn't. So, but before we start, I have a question. When you guys did your logo, did you guys arm wrestle, flip a coin? Who played Doc? Who played Marty?
I'm taller, so I just naturally took the role of Doc.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Okay. Plus, JD, your voice kind of squeaks from time to time.
Well, puberty.
Little Marty, yeah.
Yeah, puberty.
But I owe you a thank you off the get-go. If you remember later, just so you know, the next episode that we did, he was clean shaven.
Yes.
I kid you not. This is just now starting to grow back in.
It's funny how some of that comical banter hits you, like you start thinking about it. It's like, wait a minute, he did it with a smile. So, but I still hate him, and maybe I should change.
It's just the worst. It was like my mom hating on me, Bud hating on me, Kyle hating on me. It's just time for the razor needing to come out.
Yeah. When they start talking to you about reruns of Duck Dynasty, you might have an issue.
Or if they start, tonight, Bud.
Yeah, if they start giving, I'm always on fire. If they start giving you change when you're at the grocery store, then you still might have an issue.
The tamales are free.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Oh man. So yeah, if you are listening to this for the first time and maybe you didn't catch us the first time, I should say this is going to be a spoiler review of the show. We're going to get into everything that we couldn't talk about the first time. So if you want to go back and listen to the first episode first and then stream the entire show and then come back to this, that's totally on you, but you have been warned. Spoilers are coming. So I guess we should start with episode 1. Man, I really, right off the bat, I love that you guys found like a really clever way into the Back to the Future universe. And it wasn't like a standard documentary. Like it starts with the Tesla showing up and the door opens up and it's Christopher Lloyd, but he's in character as Doc Brown. And Josh is just like, what is going on here?
Oh, yeah. Listen, let's talk about that because I'm glad you started there because that was one of the biggest stories. So I originally I wrote that scene early on when Chris started talking about it, and I had no clue. I mean, no clue that we were going to be able to pull it off, number one. And number two, I had less of a clue because actually after I first met Bob Gale to get his blessing and his approval for the project, and we went through stuff, he started telling me the rules and how he turns down projects and multiple things that piss him off. And that whole scene was one of it, right? And so that's number one. The whole scene, my characters never endorse projects. There's all these rules that Bob Gale has that you can't do with his characters, right? And then that was the original one. And I say I wrote. I just kind of outlined what I think how a way to do it. And I really want to talk about this because then as we started opening up, it was like, how do we get into it? And I'll tell you that this only allowed us to do a lot of things, right? So as you get the more people you add to your directors and writers and producers meetings, the more wacky shit goes on. So then I'm not even joking. I don't even know what any of this means, by the way. We started having, Blade Runner conversations about time travel. And then there's that, and then there's a phone booth and like time travel. And here's a really strange thing about time travel. In science fiction in general, right? when you're creating it, it's like, you can somehow magically dispel any reality to your version of time travel and try to sell your version of time travel to people in the room. And then people in the room can absolutely use logic and poke a hole in your version of time travel. Well, and it started becoming, which by the way, I hate, if you haven't recognized my personality yet, is I hate when people, but here's the problem with your theory. And they start poking holes in it like this and this and this and that. I'm like, oh, shut up. And they started driving me crazy, right? Because nobody could come with a foolproof way. Because there was a version of this entire thing. And Bob Gale, if people don't know this, but I'll just tell you, Bob Gale shut this down early on, is we had Christopher Lloyd and Josh Gates time traveling to all the different locations, right? We had to go into Houston, and they were going to time travel in New York and go up in a taxi in New York, and then we're going to go to Boston and time travel there, all showing up in different types of DeLoreans, right? And I got smacked with some kind of, fan fiction reality punch in the face kind of thing where they're like, wait, no. You travel through time, not through space. So you can't go from LA to New York because you're traveling through space. Traveling through time means you start at the Puente Hills Mall, you end up in Peabody's Field, which happens to be the same geographic thing, but different time. We're like, really? They go, yeah, time travel and Back to the Future is all based on traveling through time, not through traveling through space. That's, I don't know, fucking Buck Rogers or whatever it is. Like you can't travel from one location to the next, so that won't work. I'm like, oh. Okay. I don't know. I'm learning all this as I'm learning, like, listen, you don't really understand the different variances of science fiction time travel until you start getting into this. So the honest answer was, and it was actually something I think we were always very safe when we borrow something from the movie. And for us, it was Doc Brown would show up, which, by the way, there's two things. I didn't think Christopher Lloyd was going to do it. I didn't think Bob Gale was going to prove it. And I didn't think Universal was going to prove it, right? Because it's one thing doing Christopher Lloyd as a host with Josh Gates running around the country finding DeLoreans and kind of tiptoeing there. The other thing is just like plucking a character out of the movie and just having him show up and taking us on this mission, right? But for me, when Josh Gates was introduced to us as the possible host, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We could play off that. So that's why it starts out as a normal Expedition Unknown thing. You're like, when you tune it on, you're like, it's one of his shows. And you're moving along, and then you introduce Doc Brown. You're like, oh, wait a minute. And then it was so unbelievable. Then he did a lot of ad-libbing. There's a genius one that he did, which to me, it was and we'll talk about it in a second. It was a masterful jab at me, but it was as good as the Indiana Jones shooting the guy with the swords for me on set when it happened. It was genius. Anyhow, so our version of Doc showing up, this is what happened. I came to the future. He's in disbelief. He's in such disbelief, he has to turn and break the fourth wall and go to the audience and get like, all right, just go with it. You're never going to believe this is true, but just go with it. Here's what we're doing. And he's on an adventure of a lifetime. We figure that was probably the coolest way. Now I have to tell you, which I won the fight, and I don't care who says I didn't because I won, is there was like a really big discussion with some of my co-producers and my directors about changing it to Josh Gates come back and meets the future Josh Gates meets the modern day Josh Gates and puts him on the mission. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, we have one of the most iconic characters in cinema, Doc Brown, sitting right here. And if he's willing to do it, and then the big thing I forgot to tell you is I sent the page to Bob Gale. I'm like, and I'm waiting for some scathing note back from Bob Gale, like, Doc Brown doesn't drive a fucking Tesla, which is I thought what was going to come back, right? If everybody remembers the famous line from that, and he didn't. He's like, no, this is great. I would do this, and I would say these three things. And he gave me notes on the scene, but he didn't rip the scene apart, saying the big thing, which is you can't use Doc Brown. He's a Universal character, and he doesn't drive a Tesla. Because we did have a version of it just prepared that he was driving a time machine, a DeLorean time machine. But then we really didn't want to show a DeLorean time machine in the top of the show. We wanted to kind of like, if Doc Brown came back from the future, from 15 years from now, he'll be driving a firmware update, which is a great line that somebody put in there, a firmware update Tesla. But if you can just do an update and a time to travel through time, of course, right? Elon Musk is the new Doc Brown, and he's a genius. So yeah, long answer, but that was a great scene and a big win for me to say, this is how I want to start the show, because I think it'll kind of forgive everything that you're about to see and kind of get us into the flow of it.
Yeah, I can't think of what would have been a better way to do that. I mean, it was just perfect. Like I knew it. Like as soon as I saw the Tesla come in, I was like, "Oh, Doc Brown's driving the Tesla." Like it was perfect.
It makes sense from like a tangible, practical sense. Like you slap the audience with this is what we're going to do right from the get-go.
What's interesting, and it's also why I enjoy talking to you guys, and I've done a couple other podcasts too, is that at the time or in the room and in the edit room, and then as you're visualizing these things, you don't know if it's the right thing. I mean, you have such an iconic franchise. You're dealing with Christopher, you're dealing with Bob Gale, you're bouncing things off here. I don't know how the fans are going to react, right? Because scared to death that it's going to get panned and ripped apart, and like everybody's going to shit on and go, "Why did he do that? You know, he would never. Why was he wearing a stupid tool belt or whatever's going to get, whatever we're going to get hammered for." And everybody was just happy. I mean, it was like the closest thing to a couple of people said the closest thing to an episode 4 is we could, or I guess a number 4. Part 4 that we can possibly get, and had a lot of the fun fan service stuff. So that's really our entire intention was just fan service. We're fans too. I was a fan of the movie and still am a fan of the movie. I just took my son to go see it at the Santa Monica Drive-In with 4 of his friends. Literally, I'm not kidding. 13-year-old kids like, this is the greatest movie ever made. And I'm looking like, really? Like, okay. I'm like, they got
100%.
They got all this other stuff out there that they can watch, and the CG, and this is the greatest movie. I'm like, all right, cool.
But the practical effects hold up, man. I've been shouting this for the last 4 years on this podcast. Hollywood needs to get back to more practical effects, which I hear the new Ghostbusters Afterlife has a lot of practical effects. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, let me can I tell you a funny? I'm going to tell you.
Yes,
something.
Please.
Completely stupid, and this section will be called "Fuck Elon Musk," right? Right. So, oh God, this was torture, dude. You have no idea. So, I hired a special effects company. This is actually very funny. You won't. I have a photo of it. I can send you. It doesn't matter. I hired a special effects company. Easy for me to say. And we studied and studied. They were studying the making of, and they're studying all this other stuff. So we kind of figured out how to keep the ice all over the car, and how we hit the car with O2 and CO2, and Doc does this whole thing. So we shot a day. It's probably one of the worst days of production I've ever had in my entire life, and I'm not joking about that. It was horrible. We had so many things go wrong that day. We won't get into them, right? But we end up, overcoming and figuring things out, and that's what I do. I problem solve. We do this stuff. So literally, the sun's going down. The light is perfect. So for everybody, if the light's perfect, you got about 30 minutes, right? You can have zero mess ups, right? Everything's sought. Everything. Josh jumps out of the way and does his whole thing, and then stunt driver pulls the car up, right? And all we had to do is one thing, is that little scene where Doc Brown, the rear doors open up in the gull wing. That's why we did that move. The gull wing back door. It's perfect because you do the gull wing. You're like, oh my God, it's like the DeLorean.
Exactly.
Then you think and halfway through we figured like, oh shit, it's the back door. That's okay. We'll do a camera dolly up to the front where we roll down the window. So all that's fine. So here's the fuck Elon Musk bit. This all happened, right? So if everybody didn't know this, so in the beginning, in the movie, the original movie, they took wax, like candle wax, all right? And they melted all over the car, and they kind of shaped it to make it look like ice, right? And then they hit it with O2, and it was kind of smoking off, right? So my effects guys, they must have spent, and I was pissed. They must have spent 4 hours, 6 hours, maybe. I don't know, kind of prepping the car. You guys working? Yes. Oh, the car's looking really good. So everything looks really good. Perfectly fine. Car pulls up. Doc is in there. Christopher's all made up. Everything's ready to go. We get ready to shot. Okay, key the doors. And we have a remote. And we key the doors. The rear doors wouldn't open. Like, what the fuck? Like, the rear doors would not open. We're like, oh, this has got to be some kind of joke. And like, I couldn't do it. And then I did like a bypass mode. And then I called another friend of mine, which I won't even tell anybody what it is. You can put it in dyno mode. So I was reprogramming the Tesla, putting it in dyno mode so I can forget everything. That's not what it is. What it was is when you put an extra 3.5 pounds on that door, Or if you block a visual sensor on the door, it won't open, right? So the Tesla was so advanced where if you had extra weight on that door, or if you shielded the side of the door where you have cameras, and I tell you, I know why this, I can tell you 100% what this is true, is that it won't open. So after everybody's nice and pissed off and we wrap for the day without getting our shot, by the way, we had to go back and shoot that as a pickup the next day or another time, is I took my pocket knife, which I always carry, and I chipped all the wax off the door, and it opened perfectly. Like you had to, like, the side of the door has some kind of wacky sensor. It's not a camera because I moved all the stuff. It's a weight and sensor where if there's anything near that door, around that door, basically the door was it's collision avoidance. It was like, yep, something's next to me. I'm not going to open the door into a shopping cart or something like that. And it boned our entire shot. Then I turned to my special effects guy and I'm like, you didn't open the door once when you're putting 14 pounds of wax on it? Like you didn't bother to think like, hey, let's open the door and see if it works. So the end shot was no wax. Don't put anything on the car. Right. So that the very end shot just said, well, maybe we figured out how to not put ice on a car when we go through the future in the future. So there was no wax on the car. We really wanted to go back and look like it was original, but we couldn't because fuck Elon Musk. He decided to out-censor us.
Boy, he went from hero to zero there in a hot minute. That was cool.
Yeah, sorry. He was great. But it turned out to be amazing.
No, I thought that was great. And the other thing that I really like, there's a lot of Easter eggs, and we'll get into a lot of these as we talk. And we probably missed a couple. I've actually watched it through twice. But the first shot here of Josh meeting Christopher Lloyd, not Doc Brown, he gets star maps. He shows up at the house, and Doc comes out, and he's wearing the headgear. And it's such an awesome throwback to the original movie where he's walking around and he's got his brainwave analyzer on. And he's like, what is that thing? He's like, I'm trying to regrow hair. Damn thing doesn't work.
And Chris was so good. Like once we got into it, I mean, they're pretty, they're not obvious, but yeah, as we tried to weave all those Easter eggs in there, and that was the fun part of it. Like there's hundreds, and there's some that I guarantee you didn't pick up on. We can talk about them too. But I'm a little long-winded, as you guys know. But yeah, that was a fun scene.
Yeah, fantastic. And then obviously, we meet Bob Gale pretty quickly in this story as well. But there's another great cameo. I think we talked about this on the first episode. It was something we teased a little bit, but we got the great James Tolkien to come out and work as basically like security at the Universal lot.
Yep.
And gosh, and I don't remember I don't think he really had any scenes with Christopher Lloyd in the first movies. Maybe they passed, but I don't know if they interacted. So what was that like, getting the two of them on the same set and actually interacting?
Well, I mean, the bond, and we'll talk about the bond when we get to Leah, but the bond between those guys. I mean, I had Bob Gale and James Tolkien, Donald Full and Christopher Lloyd all on the Universal backlot with us filming the whole time. It was awesome. I mean, they're just old friends. They see each other all the time. They see each other at Comic-Cons and events and stuff like that. So it was great seeing those guys. We actually have a photo of all four of them. I think Josh Gates put it on his Instagram, which was awesome. Yeah, those guys were great. And James Tolkien was like, did I tell you my negotiation with him?
You did.
Yeah.
But recap it, though, just in case somebody didn't watch it the first time, because it's an amazing story.
It's a terrible story, and I'll probably make it even better now. It's been a couple of weeks, so it's obviously got to get better. So as we're trying to hunt all these people down, right? We're hunting down the clock lady, we're hunting down everybody we possibly can. I'm like, we got to get Strickland. They're like, and then I don't know. Employees are kind of strange, right? Especially in this day and age, right? You get to employees and they get to a no and they stop, right? And the job of a producer, which nobody knows what a producer does, right? But I can tell you this. A producer never stops. Never. It doesn't really matter, right? But sometimes I employ people who just end up stopping. Like, hey, okay, at the end of the day or later in the week when I decide to remember, is like, hey, did we get hold of James Tolkien? Oh, yeah. I meant to tell you about that. His agent's dead. Like, oh, okay. Did you call anybody else? Like, no, his agent's dead. Yeah, no, I get that. I understand. Is he dead? I mean, because that would I understand. Then I would probably stop, right? No, he's still alive. Well, then fucking call somebody else. Like, what do you mean his agent's dead? Like, congratulations, his agent's dead. Okay, good. I got Swifty Lazard was his agent. I call his manager. Couldn't get anybody. We called his publicist. Couldn't get anybody. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, everybody who represented James Tolkien back in the day, they're all dead. Like, so now we couldn't get it because James Tolkien is like 93, 94 years old. Mm-hmm. So I have an amazing wizard in my office, usually who hears me yell and vent and scream, and she walks up to me and she hands me James's number in his house. She just looked him up, right? She looked him up on the yellow pages or the white pages. She goes, "Here's his number. You want to call him?" Like, oh. Yeah. Okay. So I call him. I go, "Hey, James, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I start talking to him and having a conversation. Like, "Oh my God, that sounds like so much fun." It's like, "What about all this COVID stuff?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's a little, you're 117. So I'm a little worried about you and COVID, but I don't think COVID's going to kill Yoda. So I think you'll be okay. We'll get you, wear your mask. We'll get you on a flight. And I'd like to come out, and Bob Gale's going to be there. Chris is going to be there. Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I'm 100% in. This is great. And he lives in New York. I mean, if I was halfway thinking, I could have planned something for him in Boston or when we landed in New York or something like that. But when we did the scene with Michael, but he could have been outside the door with Michael. But this scene worked out perfect. So we flew him out. Oh, I'm sorry. Then so he hangs up. 2 minutes later, he calls back. "Hey, bud, James Tolkien." Yeah. "Am I getting paid for this?" Yeah, of course. Like, "Of course I'm going to pay you for this." And he's like, "Oh, okay. What about my travel?" "Pay for your travel and your hotel. I'll have him buy you dinner." Oh, this is great. Okay, great. Because imagine he's been in the industry. He was in theater. Think about this. He was in theater in the 50s. He was doing New York theater. He is a Shakespeare actor, a theater actor in the 50s. And he just says, "Yeah," okay. And he's out there. I mean, I'm not even joking. And I always talk to people about, having a little, the seasons and the understanding of an artist and stuff like that. That guy was so talented, so easy to work with, knew his lines. And yeah, there were other people who we won't name their names that are a lot less talented, couldn't remember their lines, and were a big pain in the ass. He was amazing. Amazing. I want to write a show with him because he's Strickland. And I have to tell you, I said a line, and it's just because I was in the moment. I was in the moment for 6 months with Back to the Future. I said a line. It's like, that's out of the movie. He's like, "God, doesn't that guy ever age? Because he looks the same as he did in '85.
Yeah,
he really does."
I'm like, yeah, wait. Like, oh, I remember there was a line in the movie with Marty. Like, doesn't that guy ever age? Like, it's so weird. Or didn't he ever have hair or whatever it was? But it's still, he just looks, he's timeless. Anyhow, so that's a Tolkien story.
Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that again with our new listeners, because I love that. I fucking love that story.
So you have new listeners? Like, you don't retain any listeners? You get new listeners all the time?
We lose them all. Yeah.
This is what you're going down that route, bud.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No retention. Every episode is brand new.
And we start fresh. It's his beard
Every
mostly.
time.
It's my beard both attracts and pushes away.
Nice. So, I mean, obviously there's a great scene once we get inside the lot where Bob Gale, they meet up at the diner, and Chris Lloyd turns around and he's like, "Hey, waiter, mind if I get some mayo?" And slow turn around, mayo, and it's Mayor Goldie Wilson. And
he's great. He lives in Burbank. He's really close to where we were filming stuff. He was right there, and he was on set all day, mucking it up, taking illegal Instagram photos and stuff like that. So he was. If you follow his Instagram, it wasn't a secret what he was doing. That's for sure.
That's how I knew there was a project, to be honest, because I follow him. I think it's on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh, cool, he's doing something new with Back to the Future." And then
even though we told everybody, no photos. Like, it was like this project. Something about Back to the Future just makes people insane. You two especially. I mean, it makes people like, I look at people with a gun and say, "Don't post any photos." 2 days later, somebody on my staff, like my DP, would have photos up. I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing? I told you not to post photos." Like, oh, that, yeah. Sorry, I'll pull him down. God, yeah, it was crazy.
Yep. And this was something we had to kind of tread lightly on during the first episode, but it really we kind of dive into at this point in episode 1 that there's actually 7 cars, which I had no idea there were 7 different Back to the Future cars, and it makes sense. They made 3 movies, but I mean that makes the mission a little larger, doesn't it? Like it would have been easier just to be like, hey, we just need to find 1, but it's like we got to find 7.
Well, and that's what, Discovery kept on bugging me too. Is like, is there enough here for episodes? I'm like, well, first of all, we can tell them, right off the bat, we don't even know where a couple of them are, and we kind of have an idea. And then we lost one, which is the Orlando car, the Oxnard car, which was in Orlando, which we'll talk about. But yeah, to figure out that there's 7 cars was a big thing. And I won't get into this now, but we'll talk about it. I'll just say a blanket statement. Like the hardest part about this project. Not that any of you guys asked me that, but the hardest part about this project, right? I'm interviewing myself at this point.
Take it over.
I seem to do that. Was really the misinformation. And I don't think anybody does it, in a negative way. It's just there's so much misinformation out there, right? And when you have a staff of researchers and you're reading books and you're reading blogs, you're talking things, and then some guy pipes up in some blogs. Wait, hold. You guys are idiots. I'm an expert in all this, and here's what really happened. None of that's true. I mean, like you start figuring out, I was like, wait a minute, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about either. There's so much misinformation that we found out, right? Because it only takes, and I'm going to say this, I thought about Bob Gale, and it's like, it only takes a couple like really poignant, like, you're a fucking idiot emails from Bob Gale for me to turn to my staff and go, okay, we really got to start checking our sources because I just got the shit smacked out of me again. Now I say that it's not because Bob Gale's a mean dude, right? Because he's not. It's more that, when you're working with Bob Gale, you covet him so much and you respect him so much. The curtest of email from him, the email that's like, hey, where'd you get this information? Don't you do research? ? Like, oh, ouch. Okay, sorry. It's like, I thought you said you're a real producer. It was like, oh, God. I mean, he just kicks the shit out of you in a good way, not in a bad way. I don't think he's rude at all. But he's right. We should do a little more research. But it's hard when you don't triple, quadruple check your sources. And then we ended up just to start going directly to him. Like, hey, we heard these 10 things. Which one of them not true? We start handing to him because there is so much misinformation out there. I mean, crazy misinformation. We'll talk about Eddie Van Halen and Red and all the other stuff.
So where's that misinformation coming from? Is that people reaching out to you? Is that your staff reaching out to people and just getting smoke blown up their skirts?
No, it comes from you, JD. It's really I can pick on Kyle. I know I picked on you last time. No, it just comes from the fans, right? And the fans have to make assumptions when they don't know, or they start connecting dots like, oh, this happened because this happened, this happened, this happened. They just draw their own conclusion, right? And I think once you start drawing your own conclusion, and then it's the kind of misinformation of Wikipedia, people, I guess, like, people don't know how to do research anymore because the internet is such prevalent with like random shitty facts. Is like if you look it up, like, yeah, but did you check your source? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'll give an example. There are 3 or 4 scenes in there that's an original Eddie Van Halen song that he played in the movie. And then there's 3 or 4 scenes that go, no. There are 3 or 4 articles that, no. This is what happened in the scene. And so we ended up, trust me, I went through this. I belittled my staff. Like, hey, where did you get this? Because Bob Gale just yelled at me again. Stop getting that. I don't want that guy. I don't want any more nasty emails from Bob Gale because we're stupid. And then they would show me the article. Like, here's 3 articles. You told us to check 3 sources. Like, we think we're working for the Boston Globe. We checked 3 sources, and all the sources are wrong, right? So, like, so we ended up checking a lot of stuff with Bob.
So how much does that change, like, future episodes of Expedition? Is it just like, hey, let's just go to the main guy? Like, if we're going to do another movie, Expedition, let's just bring in the writer and get it all right the first time.
Well, yeah, I'm working on a couple other ones, which I'm not allowed to talk about. And I think you're at the end of the day, you go to the guy who wrote it, right? So instead of being a jackass and go, hey, Eddie Van Halen wrote a custom lick behind his bandmate's back and then getting smacked. That never happened. What are you talking about? But that's what we tried to do. We tried to set the record straight. I mean, and actually, I mean, trust me, there was a time where we were writing stuff and doing stuff and building these scenes and writing these fun facts and stuff like that, where I can tell you right now exactly what they were. Probably 80% of them were wrong. Not joking. 80%. I was like,
that's tough.
Wait a minute. Like we're all the Fact to the Future stuff and all this other stuff. And what happened, we start double check. Like, whoa, we should double check everything. And like, where'd this come from? Where'd that come from? Show me the source. And then it just happens in a project like that because everybody's excited. And then you start, thumbing through some random book or hitting a website that says, I got news for the audience, right? A Facebook post that pops up says 10 things you didn't know about Back to the Future. You should check those facts. By the way, don't write them into a script, right? And just think that they're the gospel, right? Do a little more research than that.
All right, so just to piggyback on that, for any of our, maybe younger audience members or just getting into the industry and they're maybe making their own documentary, what does that process look like for them? Are you whiteboarding these out? Are you a notebook, chalkboard? Like, what does that look like in terms of actually building stats, facts, fact checking? What is that process?
Yeah, it's an outline. It's called a script, but in reality TV show, it's not a script. It's really just an outline, right? And then when we go to the Fact to the Future, we had those, we had those fun facts and the Fact to the Futures and our fact. I mean, I'll tell you guys, we did this thing, which is very funny. I'll tell you guys a funky little secret. We built these things called Fact to the Future, which were supposed to come out of commercials, right? So you come out of commercials into the thing Fact to the Future, or the trick to Fact to the Future is, this is such a great dirty secret for you guys who are streaming the show, right? So the Facts to the Future were built as a way to hang the audience to come back from commercial, right? So you're like, hey, this is a cool Fact to the Future. Then you go to commercial and you sit there like an asshole and go, damn, now I need to know what the answer to this is. You either fast forward through the commercials or you wait through the commercials, and then we tell you the end of the commercials at the end, right? And we like them so much, and it gives us a lot of fun stuff. But we end up, like, out of the 7 or 8 Fact to the Future, 2 per episode, I'm telling you, 7 or 8 of them, 7 of the 8 were wrong that we had in our original, some of our original drafts. And they were wrong. And then I started just questioning. I'm like, holy, if that one's wrong, is this one wrong? What is this one? And can we check this one out? I was like, and then I just started getting on text messages with Bob Gale going, hey, I heard this story. Is this correct? I want to check with you. And then he would nicely slap me. He's earned it. Very few people I would let slap me, but he would lightly slap me and go, yeah, this is really easy to find on the internet. And you just send me an article or tell me something, but he was great and I hope we got a lot of it right. And again, in the world of fandom, which is what I think this movie falls in, there's a lot of people who do study a lot and they write books. And we wanted to try to kind of, do that. Oh, now this is good. Here comes the appearance from my wife. Dun, 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 dun.
Let there be light. There we go.
And the dogs and the wife and everything.
Hi, wife. Yeah. So, and I want to keep chugging along here because the story progresses. We get over to the Peterson Museum. We see the A car, which just looks amazing. Chris sits down inside of it and just like, all right, we'll take this one. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Geez, I can't even imagine how much that car would be worth to drive out of there. That's got to be ridiculously expensive. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the main car. That's the car that you see in all the great shots from the movie, right?
That's the picture car for sure. Yeah, the B car we did. I think the B car was in a lot of them too. If you want to think about that, because it did stunts and all the stuff like that. Oh, I have to tell you something really funny. I have to tell you something super cool in a minute. But what's interesting about that is so the curator of the Peterson Museum is a very close friend of mine. So that made it super easy. Leslie Kendall is a very good friend of mine and a good guy. And one of the things from Universal, when we got permission, right? Because it's very funny. Peterson was the PR people at Peterson were kind of dotting I's and crossing T's and telling me like, okay, but nobody can touch the vehicle. Nobody can touch the car. Like, oh, okay, that's whatever. I don't need to touch the car. We won't touch the car. Okay, so Universal made Peterson promise that we weren't touching the car. No problem.
Okay.
And then we got there, Christopher Lloyd just fucking crawls in the car. He's just like, I'm going to sit down. and I look at Leslie. He's like, yeah, if anybody's going to crawl in the car, it should be him. So we just crawled all over it. Let him do whatever. It's like, you're going to tell Doc Brown he can't sit in the car? Like, really?
If you're going to have somebody's DNA in that car, it's got to be Christopher Lloyd or Michael J. Fox, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to have anybody else do it. So that probably brings the value up on the car. Exactly right. And then we have another amazing cameo. So Leah Thompson, Chris just stops off. He's like, I'm going to take you someplace. And they just show up. She answers the door. And it's crazy because you've got Christopher Lloyd and James Tolkien in a shot. They're really not together in the movies. Then Leah Thompson and Christopher Lloyd, they're really not in the movies. Like, you did something that didn't happen in 3 movies, and we get it right here in the first episode. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Well, and Leah, I knew Leah's manager, and it was a really tough negotiation, and he was amazing, right? And then it was like, Leah's only available from like this time to this time, like an hour and a half, and that's kind of the standard negotiation, right? They twist your arm and bend you, like, Leah's only available for an hour and a half. Okay, great. So and then the shock to us and the present for you guys was the prom dress, because we called and said, hey, we're kind of doing this and we're on a search and we kind of want to have her whatever she kept from the movie, we'd love her to have it. She's like, she got the perfect thing. So Leah shows up on set and we're like, hey, what did you bring from the movie? She's like, I got the prom dress. She's like, are you fucking kidding me? You brought the prom dress? She's like, yes. We're like, oh my God. So that scene was so, it's all her. And I have to say something for the fans, which you guys will like, is the affection. It's like, and I'll say that, I don't know how to say this without being crazy, is the affection between the two of them is so amazing. It's like, and I don't want to be weird, it's like a daughter, father-daughter, grandfather. Sure. I mean, they were so affectionate and so like, I miss you, I love you, what's going on? And she would sit there and talk to him and scratch his back, and they would have conversations. It's like, yeah, I'm going to say this, I'll say it because hopefully his wife didn't see it, but it's like when people get older, and you see him again, and you don't see him that often, you cherish that moment. And I saw her cherish the moment. Like, I'm not going to see Chris for the next 25 years. I'm not going to see him all the time, right? It's right. Very limited time. I may see him 3 more times. I may see him 2 more times, and every time might be the last. And that's how I felt. She was so affectionate, so attentive to him. To the rest of us, like, yeah, I don't care. It's really just to him. Like, you were she made it very important that, like, you were an important person. And then I was over my hour and a half, right, already, because we did this huge scene, we did stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, you can go. She goes, do I have to go? No, you can hang out for the next 5 hours. I don't care. So we hung out. We shot the Josh scene there. We shot other scenes there. She just hung out on set. And they were hanging out, talking. She was talking to us. And, and accomplishment, she's a big time director, and her daughter's a really big actress now. So it was cool to have her on set and appreciate what we do and talk to us. And I don't know, it was just cool to have Leah there, because she is such an iconic part of that series. Yeah. And just to have her on set. But I'm just, that level of love and respect between the two of them was really, really cool to see. And it wasn't for anybody else. She was just staring at him, and they were talking to each other like old friends. But it was that cool old friends kind of thing. I don't know. It was just cool to see. So the vibes with Josh were not real that he was feeling. Oh, it's very funny. So I can tell you this. That's not true. No. Josh. There was a scene that got cut out later on, and I made him put it back in. Then it made the cut, right? So. No, the vibe was there, 100%. I think he 100% had a crush to him, because the very first take we did, he was being a little inappropriate. He's like, "Oh my God, put it on!" Right? He's like, "Put it on. I want to see you in it." Right? And that got cut out by somebody, maybe his executive. It got cut out early on, like he's act like a dirtbag, and I'm like, "No, put it back in," because that's such a great thing. Right. A lot of Josh Gates is ad lib, and I want to go back because I forgot to tell you the best ad lib. So when I apologize for bouncing back. So when we first went to Doc Brown's house, Christopher Lloyd's house, and he's trying to convince Christopher Lloyd to go on this mission with him, right? He's like, he said something to me. This will stick with me forever. And remember, we did multiple takes of this. But that one stuck with me forever. I'm like, we have to put it back in because it was so good. He's like, he said this, and I can't do it word for word now, but you guys can see it in the thing. He's like, this happened, this happened, this happened, which I know seems like a really convenient premise, right? That was a shot to us because he was kind of like, it's like, these guys are not gonna buy this shit, right? And so he was doing like a snarky cut. That was the only time he said, and I know that he goes, stick with me. This is a really convenient premise. And we kept it in, right? He's like, wait a minute, you're gonna do like a funny little like shot over the bow to us. Like this is all kind of a ridiculous, fun little vibe or ride. And we kept it in because I liked it. It was genuine and it was real. And he's like, I know this seems like a really convenient premise, but we have to go find this car and this photo and recreate this. And I just thought that was such a genuine moment. And it was a complete ad lib by him. We kept it in. So that was a cool moment. Anyhow, so that was the thing I was trying to get to earlier. But yeah, Leah Thompson was a great get for us. And she was, I don't know, it was a blessing and a cool thing to have her on set.
Yep. Absolutely. And she gives the next clue on where to go. So they end up at the Hollywood Museum. And my gosh, are there some amazing movie props from Back to the Future at the Hollywood Museum? Like, not to plug them and go, hey, everybody should go. You should probably, actually, if you love the movie. But I mean, it's just amazing. I was just like, my jaw was dropping. I'm like, they have that there? Like
all that stuff is real. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, it is. And by the way, that's only one floor. That place is. I'm a big Hollywood fan, but we were there. I mean, Chris was even blows like he's got all the notes and got the lamp and they got the guitar and like all that stuff is there. And there's a bunch of other stuff too. You know, Pee Wee Herman's bike and all that other weird shit. But yeah, they have a lot of cool stuff there for sure. And then Back to the Future, for sure, was the place to be. And that's really what we wanted to do. This was supposed to be a fun romp and a journey, right? Because it's hard. You're building a show where you know where 2 or 3 of the cars are. They're in museums. So how do you like go from A to B? And how do I tell you that? Right? And really the messaging was, you know, to you and JD is like, how do I tell you guys in a fun, entertaining, cool way where all the shit is at and where it's not? Like, okay, well, here's where all the cars are. And we all kind of read it and understand it. Like, oh, that's where that car ended up, or that's where that car ended up. And we kind of had to piece it together.
Next time I'm in LA, I'm going there because I want to see the Back to the Future Part 3 car. I love the third movie. I know it's not the most popular of the 3, but I personally love it.
Yep. And that dent thing was real. I mean, Chris or Lloyd said we kept on slipping off the windshield or off the top, and so they put a 2x4 across and they put a dent in the front fender, and sure enough, it was right there. It was cool.
Yep. So then obviously they're not going to get that car either, but they do get another clue that Bill Shea may be able to help him, and that kind of takes us into episode 2, the DeLorean debacle, and we get a 1949 Packard convertible right off the bat too, which is amazing.
It's amazing. If there was a car to buy, I would buy that car. That car is so badass.
Oh my gosh! Did you get to drive it?
No, I didn't. I'm not that kind of guy. I mean, could I? Yes, I was there in Boston when we were filming, and the Shays were nice enough to drop it off. And no, Josh got to drive. Yeah, they would have let me drive it all. I love that car is phenomenal. I mean, it's only one car we missed was Biff's car. We had it in the story. We missed Biff's car. I have one, by the way. I don't have his car, but I have one exact replica of his. But we didn't have an opportunity to put it in. Yeah,
I'm totally that guy. So if you want to take me for a ride in yours, I'll hop in.
Yeah, no, I have, and by the way, I got to tell you, I have a very weird class gene in me, and I'm not saying that in good or bad. I think I miss a ton of cool opportunities because I'm not the guy like, let me drive it, because technically they would. They're like, yeah, you're the executive producer of the show. Here's the keys, and you drive it. I'm never that guy. I'm always like too wacky, too cool for school. Like, no, that's good. And then I kick myself because I'm like, I should have asked that guy to drive that car. That car is badass. Yeah. It's so iconic.
So. And we get to their house. I mean, holy crap. Like, they could have their own museum in Massachusetts, could they not? I mean, it's ridiculous.
They have 3-car, it's like 6-car garage upstairs and downstairs full of Back to the Future stuff. Full.
Can you buy tickets and go there?
No.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what they're missing. Like, come on, open it up.
No, they do. Here's the thing that the Shays are amazing people. I mean, absolutely amazing something. I mean, they are so ridiculously amazing. And someone just bought a ticket. I mean, during the auction, which we definitely have to talk on because I did something today that was so phenomenal that nobody in the world can. Very few people in the world can say they did. I did it today. Oddly, not in preparation for this, but I oddly did it. And while doing it, I'm like, who says that? It's like the stupidest thing in the world. But the shades. During the auction, they just auction off a private tour of that, and they do put it up for quite often through charity auctions to come see their private collection, and they give 100% of the money to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So you can go visit there, and they do set up tours, and I'm sure you can hound and bug them and see their memorabilia. But dude, the upstairs, that whole clock wall, which is the new thing, that whole clock wall we shot, it's all brand new, and I have such an amazing little tidbit for you guys. You guys are gonna freak out in a minute about something I'm going to tell you about the linear version, which linear television is going to be on Discovery Channel. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute.
That's great. Yeah, one of my favorite parts when they're inside the Shea place is Chris comes face to face with his own mannequin. That killed me. He's like, Josh,
that just happened, by the way. Yeah, that just happened, by the way. No, like he starts looking at it and like, oh, we got to do something with that. like we got to do. He's sitting there staring like, the people are a little bit creepy. I'm like, I'm a little bit nervous. They're gonna keep me. And it was funny. Yeah, in fandom, that was a fun part.
Yeah, we get a lot of answers about the other cars too. Like next, we find out like there's the half a car, which is actually the number 3 car, which is where they got like all the interiors and everything for the movie. And then we find out that car 4 was completely destroyed. And car 5, the desert car, was sent to the Japan Universal Studios, and nobody knows what the heck happened to it.
Well, I think it was sent to the Japan back to, and it wasn't turned into a desert car at that time. It was turned back into a time machine, like a version 1, Mr. Fusion time machine. So that car, as he said, got torn apart and rebuilt and whatever, and it was sent over there because it was Universal property. So yeah, and then the other one, the fiberglass car, which is I think number 5, you said was that got completely destroyed and gone away. Yeah, and then 6 is the one that gets hit by the train. So it's like, oh my goodness, like it was upside down at Planet Hollywood in Hawaii for many, many years, and there it is. It sits there, and I worked on that car recently with the shades. We moved it around, we put it on the tracks, and that thing is just, I mean, someone built like a tube frame around it and pieced all the things together. It's not even a real car.
Just a Lego machine.
It is, because they took, I mean, in order, so you don't derail the train, the Hollywood trick is you don't derail the train. You got to take all the heavy parts out. So you pull the motor out, you pull the drivetrain out, you pull the axles out, you do everything. You kind of like piece that thing together so it just explodes when the truck hits it. So that's, you don't want it to be some big heavy thing. So it was dismantled. So oddly, somewhere the engine and that was the B car, by the way. That's the second most famous car.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think it mentions in the show that this is like if you saw anything from the movie, any action shots from any of the 3, it's this car right here.
Yep.
Like it's probably the most screen used car, if anyone.
It really is. Yeah, so, it technically is.
Yep. And then obviously we get some insight into the Oxnard car, which is number 7, and we find out that that's ended up at the Universal Studios Florida lot, and you give a big tip to head on down to the DeLorean headquarters in Texas and get some more answers. So we're off again.
Yeah, that place
another
is
trip.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I know you wanted to mention something else. I don't want to skip too far before we end up going back again. But you had another amazing story you said you were going to share.
With the thing I just did today?
Yes. Should we save that for the end, or you want to come? We can come back to it.
No, that's an end story. We have to talk.
Okay,
when we talk about the auction, that's an end story. I
didn't want to forget it. So we'll bring it up at the end.
To me, it's pretty epic. Yeah, when the words came out of my mouth, I'm like, all right, I got to talk to the guys about this because this is completely asinine and stupid and cool.
I love that you thought about us. That makes my day.
I was lying technically,
right?
But anyhow,
it could have been any group of guys. It's just the guys.
The guys. Yeah.
No, you're right because I was like, those guys. What are their fucking names? I was like, I had to look at my schedule.
Donatello, Raphael, Leonardo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the guys land in Texas. We get another amazing cameo here. Harry Waters Jr. and, your cousin, Marvin Barry from the movie. And he's renting him a car. And I love that he's got his name Marvin on there, but on the other side is the name of the company, and it's Earth Angel Car Rental. That's just like so perfect. And again, another guy that doesn't really interact with Doc. And it's just, there's a lot of fan service in this documentary, which I hope you guys planned, but if you didn't, it works out perfectly.
No, magically, Kyle, he had an Earth Angel tag on that just shows up.
Right. Totally not planned.
Step down, Kyle.
Oh, I think we could have done more technically. I mean, there were so many props and so much stuff we did. I mean, and he was awesome. I mean, I think he lives in Detroit, and I believe he's a theater teacher still.
Okay.
He teaches drama, and he hung out all day. Harry Waters Jr. I think is his name, and he was just awesome. He hung out all day with us, along with Stephen Wynn and the guys in Universal down there. It was kind of creepy, by the way. I got to tell you a funny story. So this is dead set, like just nuts bag in the middle of COVID, right? And we fly into Houston, right? And it is like zombie land. This is a funny story. So the crew was staying at a different hotel, and I had to make sure that the cast was at a nicer hotel. So I stayed at the hotel with them. And we pull up to, this is a funny story. We pull up to the West End downtown Houston, right? And the cab here, the Uber drops us off, and the crew takes off in their thing, and they drop us off. Like it's in the middle of the day, so it doesn't seem like much. We're like, okay, whatever. And I'm with Chris and with Josh, and we go up to this hotel, which kind of looks zombie apocalypse empty. We're like, oh, this is weird. So we go to one door, and it says, please go to the other door. So then these gigantic hotels, we go around the block, and we're pulling our luggage and shit like that. And we go to the other door, and it's locked too. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So we're banging on the door, and I call the front desk, and I'm like, hey, we have reservations. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. So she comes from the front door, unlocks the door, and lets us in. Okay, and then she locks the door behind us. All right, what the hell is going on here? So we go to the front desk, and she says to us these words. She's like, you're the only 3 people in the hotel. All the amenities are closed. We don't serve any food. The gym is closed. And if you'd like to book at a hotel, I understand. We're like, and it's a really nice hotel. It's like downtown West End. Like, we're like, well, we're only here for one night. And I mean, and this place is massive, like 2,000 hotels. It's like being 1,000. I don't know what it is. You guys can look it up. 500 rooms, 300 rooms, doesn't matter. It's a massive. It's bigger than my house. It's a big place, super big place. And you're like, well, I guess it'd be okay. So they just give us our keys, and we get into the hotel room. And it's like there's no coffee. The bar is closed. The restaurant's closed. The gym is closed. There's not a single thing open. And it was like, what's going on? Like, oh no, we've been closed for COVID the whole entire time. Like, so why'd you take our reservations? If it's zombie apocalypse, why did you take our reservations? It doesn't. And there's like one person working there, no maid service, no maintenance, no nothing. There's like one poor lady who like locks the door and like, hey, we want to leave. Can we get out? And she'd come over and unlock the door for us, and we'd leave. Super creepy in downtown Houston, Texas of all places. It's not like downtown LA where they thought the world was coming to an end. It was Houston,
right?
And no, it was. August, October, whatever it was. Yeah, it was definitely creepy. Anyhow, end of that story. So when back at Houston at DeLorean headquarters, when like a ton of Easter eggs, when we were up there kind of looking through records, did you see how many Easter eggs we had there?
I guarantee I missed some. Had to have. I watched it twice, and I was still getting new stuff the second time. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm going to give you guys another one. I forgot to throw that out to you. So this is just a kind of throwback one we threw in there that everybody's going to hate me for. And I'm sure, all the woke people are going to hate me. Anyhow, so there was a drawing of a flux capacitor we had when he's flipping through papers, and there was also we had Biff's. There was a card, right? We had a business card from another Easter egg that we had in there, and there was probably 3 other ones that were on that table in the whole thing where we kind of set up. You really have to study that scene a lot. The one I forgot to tell you about is, which is super funny, is in episode 1 when Bob Gale was having lunch with Josh Gates and Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, we had one of the terrorists was sitting at a table in front of him.
Are you serious? How did you pull that off?
you gotta watch it, dude. It's very funny. You're like, oh my god, that's a super Easter egg. You sit there and the guy's got the cloth on him, and it's very funny. He's sitting there. When you look back, you're like, oh shit, you guys are. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That would have been great if he would have, and I love that he didn't acknowledge him because it makes it a better Easter egg. But if he would have turned and been give a quick look, oh my gosh, the Libyans behind us.
I know you from somewhere.
Yeah, the Libyans are they're sitting right behind Josh as he's sitting next to Bob Gale, right? So there's other ones too. When they landed in Boston, in episode 2, when they landed at the Boston airport, there was probably 6 or 7 in that episode. I don't in that scene, right? So there's the guy's wearing a shirt, the guy's wearing a hat, the plutonium crosses twice. The guy carrying luggage, he passes twice. I don't know why he passed twice. By the way, he went one. Extras get kind of overzealous. We just had him go once.
We've all seen Teen Wolf.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he goes once that way, and he's like, "Why is that guy fucking walking back that way again?" He's he won extra time, so he goes back this way with the yellow case, and he goes back that way with the other case. It's pretty funny. Yeah, but there was a bunch. Yep, he's in it. Yeah, one line in Sopranos. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty funny. That's a YouTube clip. All right, where are we at now?
So we're heading to Orlando. We get the purchase log. We find out the car is there. And there's a lot of great stuff too. There's a lot of backstory in who John DeLorean is. So if you're not real familiar with that, this is a great episode to just learn about that. And I have to say too, real quick, the black DeLorean at the shop. Oh. I love the black DeLorean. That car looks sweet.
I'm all into black. I love black. And I what I didn't know either is I thought you could order them that way. But no, what he said, every car that left the factory was stainless steel. They had no paint on process. Yep. And then I thought I caught him on something because I'm kind of a car guy, which will help us with our last story. I'm a super car guy. I have a lot of cars. I like to build cars. And I'm like, hey, the tail panel and the front valence, both of those are painted. Yeah, they were painted ahead of time and shipped in. Because they told me, there's no paint facilities at the DeLorean factory. Well, how do those two things get painted? Ha-ha. And he's like, oh, no, they were painted before they got here. So those urethane, they're urethane parts of the tail and the rear of them that are that always get kind of deformed. But those 2 urethane parts are painted silver or gray. But those are painted before they get there. So yeah, I would buy a black DeLorean tomorrow. If I didn't just drive the price of DeLoreans up, I would probably buy one tomorrow.
You're the villain in this story.
Right. So we start episode 3 with the arrival at Universal. We find out the Shea family was correct. The DeLorean that's on display is indeed a fake or a replica, whatever we want to call it. But minutes later, Phil, who kind of runs things down there, introduces him to the Oxnard car, and Josh is able to verify it, and Phil agrees to let him have it. He's got to make a couple of phone calls, and it's oh, cool. This is going to work out perfect. But it's not.
It's not. And also in the beginning of that scene, you see how many Easter eggs were there, right? People walking around with shirts and cameras and all kinds of fun stuff there. DeLorean, he called it a DeLorean, which is a funny little thing that kind of happened. Phil decided he was going to give us, and that was Chris at his best. He's just kicking waste paper baskets and having fun. He kind of really understood. The hard part, I'll give you a fun story, is that this was, I guess, is the hardest part, right? Chris Lloyd, in the beginning, pulled us aside, and I've told the story a couple of times. I'm not sure if I told you guys, but he pulled us aside and he's like, I'm an actor. yeah, I got that part. Yeah, you're an actor. You're an amazing actor. I've seen Taxi. I've seen all your movies. You're amazing. He's like, yeah, I'm not really comfortable playing myself. We're like, yeah, we kind of get it. This is kind of a exacerbated part of yourself, and it's like the hardest part. And I love Chris and his wife Lisa. And I consider him. I truly love the man. He's amazing, right? But the hard part, and I don't say this in any disrespect at all. I think it's amazing because Christopher Lloyd is kind of morphed into this Doc Brown character. We're like, yeah, you really don't have to act, Chris. You're what people are looking for. Just a little bit exact. Because here's what people did say to me, and I've heard it a couple thousand ways, fan mail and all this other stuff. Is that they were all excited to see Christopher Lloyd, really pop his personality because he's very reserved in signings and in regular life, and he really is. He's very quiet and very reserved, right? But so he had to kind of in his mind create this exacerbated character of Chris Lloyd as an actor who kind of morphed into his own character. And so once we told him, it's like, oh, it's like he really, honestly, Christopher Lloyd as a human being is really calm and reserved, like so quiet and reserved. And when we were telling him just play yourself, he's like, play myself? Like, I don't understand that. It's like,
right.
Well, you should play this actor who was in a really famous movie 35 years ago, and you've kind of blended that together. It's like, oh, okay, I can do that. Because what am I supposed to tell him? Like, we want you to be you.
Yeah. It's like Carl Weathers in Arrested Development.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're so synonymous with that character. You're like, no, just be yourself. He's like, oh, well, I'm just going to go sit in the corner, read a book, and not say anything. No, not that part of yourself. No, be yourself. Your other self.
Your other self. Your vibrant self.
Exactly.
So I do have a question about the Universal Garage where the Oxnard car is. Are there any other treasure troves in there? Because we don't get to see a lot, but I have to imagine it couldn't have just been the DeLorean in there, right?
No, there's a lot of other cool stuff in there that that they didn't show us or didn't want to show us and stuff like that. So no, we just really wanted to focus on the 2 or 3 cars that were there, and the DeLorean was obviously one of them.
Okay, I was wondering if you got a chance to look around if there's anything else that was really cool there, maybe the Back to the Future Ecto one, or who knows what's lingering around in that garage.
What the hell's the Back to the Future Ecto one?
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bud, because I was going to call him out on that too. What the hell?
Smack the shit out of you! Come on.
The Back to the Future Ecto one.
You're just mad because you got made fun of the first time. I see what you're doing.
You're the one that shoved your foot up your mouth there.
Big foot.
Yeah, so the Back to the Future Ecto 1 is amazing. It's great. It travels through time and kills ghosts. I don't know what to say to that.
Vigo the Carpathian has no chance.
There you go. There you go. All right. No, really that we were just there to focus on that particular one, and having Chris want to steal it, and he was he was at his best in that thing. When I'm stealing this one, and then that one we kind of. And listen, our special effects were great. The paper didn't fly up. I mean, all of our stuff, with the photo dissolving, which we obviously borrowed from the movie. And we really tried everything we had to think was an homage. What is the homage we can use, including the disappearing photo and then it coming back to life. And then that was, by the way, so hard to keep track of because every single time, check the paper and it's it's 70%, it's 90%, it's gone, it's missing, it's a weather. It's crazy.
Yeah, then we get obviously a huge line from Chris, which is kind of leads us in towards the end of the movie, and that's we should just build it. And Josh, we got to build it.
We got to build it. It was really kind of one of the things that because really the premise that I came up with, and it was really how do we benefit Michael J. Fox and his foundation, and how do we get Michael J. Fox involved in something like this? And my background, if people don't know, is I do a lot of car build shows, right? So to me, building a time machine, which was a first, but it's also really easy, right? It's okay, wait a minute, I speak the language, I understand how to do it. I can get a donor car. We had to hunt down all the amazing people, which we'll talk about, and hunt down all the parts, which we'll also talk about. And And then that was a fun part of the build for me. And we're also in Discovery Land too, where car builds are okay and process and build montages are okay and part of it. And that was really kind of a means to the end to get to the story. It's like now we have to build it ourselves, right? So cue, Huey Lewis and News and let's go for the build.
So was that always what you envisioned for how this was going to go towards? Or did you have a couple of different avenues that you're like, okay, maybe we would get car 7? Did you have different plot lines that you were working with?
Never. No. It was the entire the initiation of it was always to build regardless of how we get there, was always to build a car for Michael.
Nice.
And deliver the car to Michael. And because
awesome.
I really wanted to, show people too how you build a car. What does that mean? Right. What does that I guess you could purchase one of the screen used cars for a couple $100,000 and then what? I mean, so what we really wanted to do, and we'll talk about at the end of the show, but what we really wanted to do is show the process of building a car, what it means, get the details going. And then we just had these amazing things that happened along the way, which kind of, again, dovetails into what we're going to talk about at the end. And I'll tell you what it is. So this is a super interesting thing that happened. What are the most important things, right? And this thing's got to be worth $100,000, right? So as we start researching and figuring this out and talking to people, like where I could get parts and where I could build stuff and where I could do and who would get involved. So Joe Walzer, who's, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him, but he did the documentary. He's the one that restored the A car. We show up, we had a couple conversations with him. I see a couple cars and everybody's trying to, I have to make some good decisions at this point because everybody's pulling me a different direction. Like, oh, build my car, or I can build it, or who do we get to build it? And then there's also this, ridiculous political landscape because there are like 3 or 4 builders, right? A couple that Bob Gale endorses, and there's a couple that Universal doesn't like, and then there's some other people that don't do them as good. So I had to kind of like figure out where to go. And obviously I landed on DMC. There's a guy, Danny Bobkin, who is absolutely amazing. And then I talked to Joe Walzer, especially about their timeline. Like, hey, Joe, by the way, we don't have 2.5 years to build this thing. We got about maybe 4 months, right? But Joe did this amazing thing for us. Is he came one day with a box and said, if you're going to do this, you should, and he's going to be involved, which we told him he'd be involved with the show, is you should put this in it. And he brought me the original flux capacitor, right? And I want to explain to people what that is, and then I should absolutely tell you at the end what I did. So the original flux capacitor, what it is it was, and this is amazing, right? So remember, so the B car, right, which is the one that was used in more often in almost all the shots, and there's one that was blown up at the end, right? So the first time that you see the flux capacitor is when Doc Brown comes out to Lyons Estate, and he goes, and this is when I drew this, and he shows you the photo, the hand sketch. When he hit his head, he drew this. And then Marty comes over there and turns it on, says the flux capacitor, it actually works, and Doc Brown celebrates. Well, that is from the B car, right? Okay. And that is the flux capacitor box that Joe Walzer had. Because, I don't know what is the crazy black market of, Back to the Future parts and how people get it. But he said when he was restoring the original one that someone came to him and said, hey, or Universal had it. I don't even know where it came from. It wasn't ever in the A car. So the original flux capacitor that was in the A car is in the A car. But really the most well-known and the most seen flux capacitor, because keep in mind, there's many of them. When Marty's in there, there's a flux capacitor next to him. That was probably in the process car, which is the B car that the Shays have. But the B car, which is the one they showed, is like when he turned it on, that is the flux capacitor box that I have from its screen used, which is really weird. And I can attest to like a couple cool things, and I'll tell you in a second what it is. That is screen used, and I took it to, and I said, okay, you're going to give this to us. He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I don't know how much I think it's worth. And then, listen, even Danny Bobkin, who restored made our thing, was like, are you sure that is it? And I talked to Bob Gale about it, talked to Joe Walzer, and then Danny Bobkin came back and says, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one. It's the one that's in. So Joe Walzer said, this is it. Danny Bob says, you know what? I really think it's it's a little bit darker gray than a lighter gray than the ones that are in the replica cars. So that was an amazing thing. So we start collecting all these original parts, right? And then I have had a relationship with Apex for a long, long time. I mean, and a long time, because I've been in Hollywood and I've been building my own sets and I do stuff, and sometimes I want like crazy stuff. So I've bought stuff from Apex a long time, and we actually took everybody back there, and Kevin, who was there with us, and I brought Josh Gates and I brought everybody. So then we start digging up the history and the lore of what, Apex, not Junkyard, but Apex Electronics is, or Apex Places. That was an amazing shoot for sure. To go back to the original place where Kevin Pike got all the original parts for their very first DeLorean, and able to find certain parts and get certain stuff and tour relays and all that other stuff, which we got, was amazing.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about Kevin, and because he's got a huge part in this as well. And I feel like Chris really lights up too when Kevin like walks on. I was like, you could tell had to be some type of bond there with those guys as well. At least it came off on screen like that. But just to backtrack for a second, the guys go to Sun Valley to find this DeLorean in the barn, and this was, to me, the funniest part of the entire movie. Chris really kind of takes one for the team here with Maple,
dude,
who's got a black tooth. Oh my gosh,
dude, that scene got. I mean, it was. I don't know how to say it. So I'm guessing that scene was really, really big, and it was super, super campy. And she starts talking about, you'll see it maybe as it expands, plucking hairs in her chin. And I have a pet rat named Doc, and it got. I don't know what. It's funny. You get into these projects, and on set things seem like a good idea, and then in the edit, I'm like, oh God, are we going too far? And there's other people on my team, my editors and the directors are laughing their asses off, and I'm like, there's no way people are going to think this is funny. I didn't expect. Then I forgot there's guys like Kyle in the world, right? So of course, Kyle's going to think this is great. So I'm glad you guys love that scene, because it made me uncomfortable. It was so campy, it made me uncomfortable. And then he's going to go in the barn and take, like you said, take one for the team because she's a fanboy, and Josh is sitting there and he plays it really. Was like, oh, okay, boy. Aren't you on TV? And that's such an homage. On TV? Well, yes, I am. Not you. Him. Shut up.
Yeah. They get back in Josh's car, and he's like, I don't want to know, do I? And he's like, you most certainly do not.
I feel like that's Kyle's life in a nutshell.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm all right with that. So, so they pick up the car, they bring it back to Danny. We find out the bones are good, and I mean, and you're saying as far as like the time frame, I don't think it get mentioned, but you're saying 4 months was the build time.
Well, it was probably a little bit longer because it was like 4 to 6 months. We actually purchased a car and almost started production, and COVID hit, and then it was like, okay, don't do anything for the next 2 months. When you're done listening to the crappy media and you step out of your house for a minute and to take a breath, we had them start, stop, and then we were rewriting the scenes and figure out like, well, how much is the build actually going to play in this? Like, how much is the process of it? So then we started and we stopped, and I said, Danny, just order all the parts, get everything made. Because Danny custom makes stuff and then custom bends the tubing and gets all the lighting. And then what's very funny is that, and then Kevin Pike threw us for a loop in that design meeting we had. It's very funny, just to let everybody know. This is one of those Martin Scorsese things. Not that I believe anything we do is close to Martin Scorsese, but I give him an homage because that opening scene where we do not opening scene, but the design meeting where we have kind of like top lit down and you have all those kind of mobster characters around with ponytails and Chris Lloyd there. That was our first day of production. We shot that scene out of sequence. That was our first day of production. So it's in episode 3, but it's absolutely the first day of production. That's like, as we really really start honing things in. It's like because we had to get the car started and we had to understand. So Kevin Pike really kind of kicks Danny Bobkin in the balls, and he's like, yeah, none of these LED blue lights. That's BS. Ours was white lights. And then Danny's like, I already ordered the blue lights. What do we do? I'm like, you should get white lights because we're going to use that clip. I know we are. We're going to be authentic. It's like, damn. So I had to pay for 2 sets of lights, some blue lights and some white lights. But he had to restring it all because he's right. Everybody uses these kind of like weird little blue lights, and the original car had white lights. So ours has white lights.
And just to give a little insight into Kevin Pike for those who may not know who he is. So he's the original creator of the DeLorean car. And then he also worked on Jaws, Close Encounters, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like, he just has this amazing filmography of stuff that he's been a part of. So to have him helping you guys restore it is pretty awesome.
Well, he wasn't the original creator. So there was a guy named Prost.
Oh, okay.
Alan Prost. Yeah, Alan Prost, the original designer of the car. So really a lot of the early designs, you saw some of the sketches, those are all, and he just died recently too. His name's Alan Prost. He did all the original sketches, but he ended up being too busy. And Kevin obviously worked on Jaws and just came off some other work with Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters and stuff like that. So I'm sure Spielberg brought him in and he did the original build on it. Not the original design. And I'm sure a lot of stuff. Sorry to clarify, but again, that's
No. I don't want an email from Bob Gale. Please correct me.
Oh, dude, I'll send you something.
Kyle would love to be smacked around by Bob Gale. He just doesn't want an email from Bob Gale.
Right.
The
email scares me. So then we head to the Apex, which like you already talked about, it's just this amazing place full of stuff that you can get for builds and stuff for movies, and obviously they're getting a lot of help from Kevin Pike here, and we just get this big long shopping spree, and they're finding all this stuff, and and how much of that like was already there, and like did they have to bring any stuff in specifically and bring it in to get ordered to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit?
Yeah, I got to be really fair to Apex. So, don't flood Apex with a bunch of, stuff like that. So Apex doesn't have all that shit laying around. We actually had to bring parts that Danny had to source and make to make it seem like we ended up getting the parts from there, because I know, the wonderful lady who runs it now from her father, she took it over. And she's amazing. She's gonna hate me if I say go there. They have battery brushes and tour relays laying around. Her name's Melissa Slater, and she's awesome. But yeah, please don't go there because they don't have any parts. We brought most of those in.
That's why I wanted to bring that up, just in case anybody was like, "I'm gonna go rebuild my whole DeLorean right there," and they're gonna be like, "What are you doing?"
But they have a lot of cool shit.
Yeah, they do.
Still, if you search around, you can still. All that stuff. We only brought in like the little, like, oh look, here's a thing for it. An O2 canister, a couple little. The keypad was the big find, but we brought that in, honestly, because they didn't have extra keypads. They actually have, I think, the original keypads from a couple, but it's in a locked case behind something.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
It's still. You should have seen people, because that place is filled with prop makers and build makers and super nerds and all these other things. And we were walking around there with Christopher Lloyd. People are like, who is that? Like, yes, it is. It's Chris Lloyd. That's who it is.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Pay no attention to me.
Right. And so out of all the stuff that you guys bring in, obviously it all works perfectly, but we find out the article, is starting to disappear off the newspaper. We've got 48 hours until they're supposed to meet up with Michael, and Josh has kind of had enough. And I kind of love the storyline of Josh like walking off, and Christopher has to really kind of take the lead the last couple of days to pull it all together. And just talk to us a little bit about that kind of that part of the storyline.
Well, no, because remember in the thing he broke, he feels like he's a buffoon because he broke the flux capacitor and the total relays won't work anymore, right?
Right.
He puts his elbow through it, so he was like finished and done, and he was very frustrated. They just ruined it, and the thing doesn't come to back. So you're right. Christopher Lloyd takes the reins, helps Danny finish everything, and then that's where. Although I ruined the entire podcast by telling you what we found through Joe Rolzer, but that's where Christopher Lloyd, that's how we had to kind of incorporate the original flux capacitor. That wasn't fake. It needed that one special element, right? And that one special element turned out to be this box that Joe Walzer gave us. And we had to kind of do it in an entertaining kind of cool way. It's like not exactly. We failed. We didn't fall. We didn't fail, right? So we do the unveiling. We do that whole amazing scene, which we talked about, which was that was our like second or third day of production. And I can't tell you the 50, 60, 70 people that were camping for 8 hours out in the Puente Hills Mall while because imagine, it was funny. People do tours all the time out in Puente Hills Mall.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden there's a couple things. Everything's roped off of police tape. There's a lighting balloon popped up in the sky. And then what's interesting is, so the bread truck, I made a very interesting deal with the Shays. I didn't want to build a bread truck. They had a replica bread truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Shays did. But the back of it was just plywood with some ramps on, tacked to it or bolted to the ramps. It wasn't a working one.
Okay.
I called the Shays. I'm like, I need to borrow your bread truck. And they're like, okay, you got to rent it from us. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to rent it from you. But what I will do is I'll make it functional. I'll put a winch in there, which we'll talk about. I'll put a winch in there and I'll build ramps in there so you can put a DeLorean in it for real. He's like, can you do that? I'm like, yeah, I can build anything. It's fine. So I shipped, which cost like $5,000. I shipped their bread truck from Boston out to LA to one of the shops that I work at, that I work with. And I design it and I tell them, here's what I want. I want this, and you got to put a winch in there because the DeLorean doesn't have enough power to go up at an angle like that. So you have to hook a winch to it to winch it up there because it just sits there. Like I drove it in there. It's like, like it stops like halfway. So you gotta pull it in there. And by the way, you can't get out of it once you put it in there. That's the other thing too. You can't open the door. So you have to like get it up to the door, get out, hook the winch to it and pull it the rest of the way in. So all that has to be fabricated. So we fabricated the shop and now the whole thing works just perfectly, identically. He had a beautiful bread truck to begin with, Doc Brown Mobile Science Lab to begin with, but then we just made it absolutely perfect, by building the ramp system that worked on it. So anyhow, you're right. So at the end of it is we end up pulling it out. And by the way, can I tell you a fun story?
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting, fun little revelation of mine. So it doesn't matter. I'm not saying this for any self-serving way. So I drive a lot professionally. I race cars and I do a lot of things. So I always, patent myself that I'm a big stunt driver, whatever. And so it wasn't much stunt driving going on. All we had to do is back the bread truck or back the DeLorean out of the bread truck. And I'm like, well, I don't really trust anybody else but me to do that. So I'm going to do it. So we do the rehearsal. All right. That's why I said I personally drove it up there because I was doing all the stunt driving, which wasn't stunt driving until this one thing happened. So I backed the bread truck up and the guy winches it in. We close the door, right? And then they say action and the door opens up, all right? And I start the car, which doesn't sound like it does in the movie. It's a lot less throaty. And then I put it in reverse and I literally just let the brake and I come down. And it's good because I have visual cues on the side of me and I can see everything nice and I can kind of feel with my butt it coming down, the front thing lowers, and then I got a walkie in the car and they tell me to stop where I'm supposed to stop or I'm going to run over Doc Brown and Josh Gates.
Yep.
This works out great in rehearsal, right? I'm not joking. It works out amazing in rehearsal. I was off set doing whatever they're getting set. So then they're going to try one for real. I'm like, okay, let's try one for real. I don't know what that means, but whatever. So we load the car again and we pull the back of the truck up, right? And then this is the tricky part. Then they smoke the inside of the bread truck so we can have all that billowing smoke. And there's a lot of smoke in there. So I'm like, ooh, boy, that's gonna be kind of tricky. And then they do the thing that they didn't tell me about. And I was fairly pissed and also completely disoriented, right? Then they smoke the inside of the car. The car that I'm in, right? So being a good stunt driver is fine, right? You have all you got everything, your hands, stuff like that. So they smoke the inside of the car where I can't even see my hands. Like I can't see this far in front of me. It's so just pitch black with this smoke. So now I'm holding my breath. I can't see a fucking thing, right? I can't see my hands. So I don't know. If you go like this, like can you really tell if your hands are like at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock when I'm supposed to get them dead straight? And now I'm supposed to back out where I had visual cues where I could see stuff and I see the angle and I can also judge the speed by what's going by. I can't see anything. I can't see my hands. I can't see the sense of speed. So now I'm completely driving by the feel of my ass, right? So I'm feeling like, okay, there's one bump, that's one center of the ramp, there's the other thing. So I'm like, they go action. I'm like, this is how stunt guys die on set, right? Not to this extreme. Not that I was in any danger, right? But this is how stunt guys die, right? They're like, rehearsal's perfectly fine, and then they start lighting shit up and then smoking stuff out, so they make all these visual, make it real. I'm literally backing this super expensive DeLorean out of the back of a truck, and I don't want to be the guy screwing it up, because if I go like this, it goes off track and we break the thing, and it's my production. So now I'm like, okay, so I do it once, okay, that's good, and then like the door kicks open and the smoke billows out, and I get out and I start yelling at everybody. I'm like, you guys didn't tell me you're going to smoke the entire thing. I couldn't see a fucking thing. I can't see my head. Like, and my director's like, that was beautiful. It's great. Loda, let's do it again. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I did it once. Might as well do it again, right? Because I know we got it once. So some of the pressure's off, but I didn't want to wreck the car. And you really got to like back it out of the truck, hit a secondary ramp and a third set of ramp, and you got to like go at a certain rate. I couldn't even tell the speed I was going. I could go 100 miles an hour to the back, and like, you're going backwards and you don't have a sense of speed because you literally can't see anything. That was just a fun little insight.
So for what it's worth, you just described Kyle's wedding night.
Like it was all smoke and mirrors and he couldn't see anything.
Well, I was going to ask whose ass did you chew when you got out, but it sounds like kind of everybody. So that's great.
I'm really I yell at everybody equally. It's like, no, you guys forgot to tell me you're going to highly annoying for me, and I can imagine. And I ended up doing it like 3 or 4 times. It worked out good, but it was kind of unnerving. It was like, hey, you guys forgot to tell me you're going to smoke the inside of the car. Now I can't see anything, so good luck. I hope I don't kill anybody, but it worked.
So, and we're pretty much to the end here. So Chris brings out the box of goodies here. Well, really just one goodie. It's the original flux capacitor, and all is well. So they head to New York City, and they bring the car to Michael, and they reveal it, and he's just like, wow, great Scott. This thing's just perfect. And he gets to check out the car, put the stamp of approval on it. Cooler that they actually were able to put that in there as well. So, and that's kind of the end of the show. Josh recaps it and kind of retells the journey, and then we get the last shot of Doc Brown dressed as a janitor taking the photo of the guys. So
that was something we put in later, but having Michael was the big key. I mean, we technically missed one person, right? So we missed Biff.
Right.
We missed Biff. Crispin Glover doesn't want anything to do with the franchise, but Biff is sometimes, fickle, and he's kind of in and out, and we tried to get him, but he wouldn't work and he wouldn't do it. And I personally talked to Tom Wilson. I'm like, hey, this is something special, and it's something cool. I mean, and I, if it's a money thing, let's talk about it. It's like, no way in hell. He told me, no way in hell I'm doing it. Like, okay. But what's weird is he'll go on Cameo and do Biff impersonations. I guess it's not impersonating if he's doing, but he'll do Biff characters for people on Cameo. Right. But he won't come on our show and be a part of it. It was really strange, but whatever. You didn't want to be a part of it. That's great.
Yeah, his loss.
Did you try to get Huey Lewis on there?
Yeah, I did. I offered Huey. For sure. Yeah, we had a cameo for Huey set up, and then how the conversation goes in the Back to the Future world. I'm gonna just let everybody know what happens, right? I randomly offer somebody something, right? It doesn't even matter who it is. They end up calling Bob Gale. Like, is this important to you? Do you want me to do it? Is this a real project? And then Bob sometimes will say, because he was a very, he's become a good friend, and it was into the show, and he's like, Huey was dealing with some medical issues at the time, and also it was right in the middle of COVID. So he basically said, Bob, if this is life or death, I'm very uncomfortable with COVID. I have some medical issues I'm dealing with, and if this is something you want me to do, then I'll do it for you. And Bob's like, I'm not going to put pressure on you. You know, this is definitely a legitimate project, and here we're doing it for Discovery Channel, but you make your own choices. So he ended up turning us down, which is fine. It would have been great to have him. We had some pretty cool cameos written for him, and we wanted to do. But yeah, we'd like to have Huey, but it didn't work out.
Huey's awesome. I think love.
No,
Huey.
Huey's yeah.
Yeah, so
He would have been badass.
So I know we wanted to get to this. So right at the end of the episode 4, it pops up that you can actually bid on the car, which the auction ended on April 15th. So
Kyle, you're going to come pick up the car?
Shoot. My bid would have been very low for that car, but I'd love to come pick it up. I gotta ask, what did it? I couldn't find anything online. So what did it actually raise for the foundation?
So the DeLorean that we built, which is kind of an odd dream come true in a lot of ways, $400,000. I got $400,000 for the foundation.
Crap.
Nice.
That's insane.
And I was watching it. I was a nerd. I was watching this thing, and I was watching, and it was like, throughout it was like 200,000, and then it went to 300,000 or 305. And here was the trick was in online bidding. If someone bids inside the 10-minute window, then it automatically adds 10 minutes to the time because they don't want someone to kind of jump in. You got to let your dog in, JD? Was that?
Yeah, no, my dog, she's good. She's comfy on the couch now.
Okay, guy. All right. So what happens is if you bid 10 minutes before it does, it adds an extra 10 minutes because they don't want someone coming in like a last minute hitting like $5,000 and getting it. They want obviously try to raise as much money as they can. So it was like 1 minute to go, 30 seconds to go. Someone bid $65,000 more, and another person on top of that bid $5,000, like in succession. It's like bang, bang, bang. It's like there was 2 guys fighting it out because it was like 305 for a while. Then it was 605, and then it just kind of elevated like 400,000, and then all of a sudden it ended. So I was sitting there and I was watching it and studying it, and I forgot where I was. I was on a shoot someplace at a restaurant. Oh no, and I was on my way to Baja, Mexico. And it was like a Panera Bread or something like that. And I was watching it. And then like, it was at 400,000. And then it was like 30 seconds. I'm like, hey, someone's going to bid. This is going to go crazy. And then it just stopped. So it stopped at 400,000. The shirt, which we had made, it wasn't the original shirt, but a shirt that we had made for Chris Lloyd went for like 3,000. So the shirt that we made him, he was not happy about it. He's like, why do I got to wear this shirt? It's like it's good for continuity, and it's kind of a gag the whole episode. You're wearing. I was gonna say
Josh
shirt.
rips him the whole time about
the whole time. It's awesome. He's like, can I wear a different? No, Chris, you can't. He's like, oh, okay. And the next day, he's like, what am I wearing today? He's like, you're wearing that crappy shirt again. It's like the whole time, like that was like it was this uncomfortable thing. But I don't know if he did it to bug us. He would just come like, and what's my wardrobe? Same shit. You're gonna wear that shirt. But that shirt went for $3,000, right? I know I bought the shirt, I framed it, and we have something that we donated to the foundation. And then I think the Shays tour went for $2,000. Someone had a private tour of the Shays for $2,000. So, we ended up raising $405,000 for the foundation. And I text Nina, who runs Michael's foundation, and they were really, really happy about it. So it was good.
Congratulations! That's awesome.
I think anytime that you can, we're in television, right? And most television, some documentaries you get to do, but most television, is meaningless, right? If you're doing the Housewives or something like that, like what kind of redeeming quality you have, you're doing that. Right. It's such an honor for us to be in a business in this part of the business where you kind of got to do a really cool TV show, and then you get to do something that's going to benefit people and help people, right? And then for Michael, just to believe me out of the blue a year ago when I started doing this, he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And it was like such a tense negotiation. It wasn't even a negotiation. It's like, I'm going to build a DeLorean time machine, and I'm going to donate it to the foundation, and all I need is Michael to come and pick it up from Christopher Lloyd. What else? No, nothing else. There's no catch. There's nothing. Just show up on camera. It's going to be on TV. It's going to be on camera, and just pick up the DeLorean. That's all the storyline was. And they're like, and it like, okay, we got it. And I was waiting for the call from the agent, and then I was waiting for this, and I was waiting for that. And I did get that weird call. It was like we were all in New York at the time, and then somebody called me. Is like, is this a SAG show? I'm like, Like, no, it doesn't need to be a SAG show. Michael's not playing a character; he's playing himself. Like it's Michael. Like
Right.
You don't need to be SAG. Like he's playing himself. He's not playing anybody. He's just showing up Michael J. Fox from the Foundation. We're not writing a character for him. It's like, oh yeah, good point. Okay, cool. I'll see you in a few hours. I'm like, oh my god, I thought we were gonna be dead. I thought we were gonna be dead.
Oh,
But it worked out.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So-
that's fantastic that you guys raised that much money, though. That's incredible. So
Yeah.
hopefully it gets put to good use and they're able to start finding some cures for Parkinson's. That'd be amazing.
Oh no, and hopefully that's the end game. The foundation, Michael J. Fox Foundation, is doing for the cure for Parkinson's, doing such an amazing job, and I hope it helps them. We all know people that are afflicted by that disease. So here's something. I guess we can end on this because I did it right. So I get to say this, and I said it out loud today. So, when we ended up having the car, right, and this is when we ended up finishing the car, we didn't have the original flux capacitor from the movie, the B-car movie we just discussed earlier. We didn't have all the inners and all the torque relays and all the flashy stuff. We didn't have that all wired. That was still being rewired by Danny Bobkin, right? So we completed it, and it just sat in my garage at my office because I have a warehouse part of my office that I have cars. I think I probably showed you guys last time. So what's weird is, I had the original flux capacitor with all the working material in it, with a couple wires hanging off and a couple screws. And Danny Bobkin says, hey, when I'm done with this, you just got to swap the flux capacitors out. And so I've been putting it off for like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, right? So I build a lot of stuff. I'm halfway mechanically inclined, but probably the first time that I've reinstalled and took out a flux capacitor and put a flux capacitor back in. So I was having meetings today and talking to people and some of my staff. I'm like, hey, I can't do it at 4 o'clock because I got to go put the flux capacitor back in the time machine. Odd statement. Not many people get to say that. And I literally took, so this is a super interesting thing. And a lot of people can identify with this, or certain people. So the recreation flux capacitors that people put in their replica time machines have these flanges. It has 4 little flanges, and the flange is a little bump in the plastic. They're kind of molded plastic where you bolt them to the back firewall where that window used to go, right? So I unbolted that today. I unbolted the kind of the fake one that was in there, and I cut the wires. I was a little hesitant, but I ended up cutting the wires. I stripped the wires and I pulled them out. And then I went and got the original flux capacitor, and it doesn't have those flanges. It's just like a there's no place to bolt it. I'm like, oh shit. So then I was like, all I gotta do is take these 4 bolts out. I kind of made it a big deal in my head. I take these 4 bolts out and I'll put the 4 bolts. No, those are done afterwards. This one does not have any flanges to bolt it to the wall. Like crap. So then I had to take the innards out and they were all wired. And so then I had to set it on top of the 4 bolts because it's a big, wide kind of gray box, like 12 inches or 11 inches wide. And I had to carefully screw it to the sheet metal in the back. I was doing this all today. I installed the original flux capacitor in Michael J. Fox's time machine because the owner is coming. The guy who paid $400,000 is going to pick it up today. So I did that today. I should have filmed it because it's I should have done a crazy TikTok, even though I'm a little too old for TikTok. I'm not sure. Hey, I got 40,000 views. Hey, I'm about to put the original flux capacitor in Michael J. Fox's thing, but I did that today. It was nerve-wracking because the guy's coming, and my fallback would call Danny Bobkin and tell him I'm a failure and come up and rewire it and put it in, but I ended up doing it. All right. So, and I did it. It was very weird. So some people on my staff are helping handing me tools, and I'm doing this serger. I'm pulling the ulna out and I'm dropping it in there. I swear to God, I must have hit my head on the sharp little things 3 or 4 different times, bleeding from my head because I'm going in there going, ow. And then I did the cool thing. I turned those battery connectors and I turned it on, and the flux capacitor worked. I rewired it and bolted it to the wall and kind of put it in place, and it sits there. And I'm like, I just did it. I just put the original flux capacitor back in where it belongs in Michael J. Fox's car.
That's amazing. Man. That is amazing. And yeah, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's it. That's it. That's the end of our story. That's the thing I waited. I thought the irony of that, and then I'm sitting and talking to you guys, but I just replaced the original flex capacitor.
No big deal. This
No big
is just
deal.
doing work.
Exactly.
Well, man, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Not only the first time, but coming back for the follow up, and letting us dive into it and break it all down with you. And man, we'd love to do it again, but we need another expedition.
Yeah,
nothing you want to break here? You sure you don't want to break it?
No, nothing yet.
Expedition Point Break.
Oh, there we go.
You're gonna go find him in the ocean or something like that.
Exactly.
Oh no, trust me. I'm working on one with Gone to 60 Seconds. I'm working on a couple other ones. There's some really cool stuff that we're working on. So hopefully we'll come back and talk to you guys.
No,
and listen,
awesome.
if there's other cool stuff you got to talk about, just reach out to Cynthia and we'll do it again. You guys are amazing, and thanks for the time. Oh, ready? I got some really cool stuff for you. Right? This is really gonna mess you up.
Ready?
But this is so inside baseball, and it's really gonna mess you up. And you guys got to do some super research, right? So, all right. So Discovery. So the series launched on Discovery Plus, right? And the clock for Discovery Plus, there's going to be a test after this, right, JD? So you should write these numbers down. The clock on Discovery Plus was 38 minutes. Okay, 38 minutes. Then we had to recut a new version when it goes on linear channel in a couple months. And linear channel is Discovery Channel, right? Not the streaming platform. So eventually our show will be on the linear channel, and it is 42:30. So how many minutes is that, JD? Extra minutes you get?
6.5.
Okay, you suck. 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
4.5.
4 minutes and 30. You're an idiot. All right, so 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you. Just lay it down. That's why I studied English in college, not math. Back down.
All right. Yeah, I didn't study English, so we can figure that out. So there's 4 minutes and 30 seconds of extra content. Other stuff we had to pop in there. More stuff, more Easter eggs, right? And last part of it, and I won't tease you anymore, JD. Sorry. Yeah, like you, because you'll write me a nasty email or something like that with all your big words.
Right.
So
Bob Gale level stuff slapping you around.
No, the respect level has to be there. Actually, Bob Gale never heard to get that respect.
I walked right into that.
Hits him again in the nuts. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. But the international version is ready. The international version is 48 minutes.
Ooh,
so
goodness.
The people internationally outside the United States. So there's a 38 minute version for the streaming platform because that's what Discovery wanted, and then there's a 43:30 for the linear channels when you watch regular Discovery Channel coming up soon. But we delivered a 48-minute version. So there's 10 minutes of extra content. And I mean, every scene is longer. All the facts are a little bit bigger. Some of the there's just more stuff. We're talking, and think about this. This is like a whole extra episode, right? It's 40 minutes worth of extra content at the international version. So now you guys got to figure out how to web it out there. So anybody in the EU, in Europe, or Australia, New Zealand, wherever Discovery Channel is broadcast internationally, has got to get you in the 48 version, because now it's a whole other show.
Right.
An extra 40 minutes.
Gosh, if we only knew somebody was like a producer that could get us the cut. I mean,
no.
Nope, haven't hit that level with him. Maybe next time.
That's an interesting thought. I don't know if I could send you guys a screener or something like that. Maybe, yeah.
All right.
Let us know.
We buttered his bread a little bit. We'll see what happens.
There we go.
We'll let it play out. But like I said, we appreciate you coming on. We look forward to doing this again in the future, and all the best to the expedition team, and wherever you guys are going next, we'll be following along. And if you guys haven't streamed the show yet, make sure you do that. Get it on Discovery Plus. You can get a 7-day free trial, and it's a great watch, and you can knock it out in probably one night. The short 38-minute episodes, and get them done. And that's it. If you want to follow Bud's production, you can do that. It's BCII Production on Twitter and Instagram, and they'll have all the updates there. Bud, thanks for coming on again. We appreciate you.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Bud.